please, we're going to be talking about, the name of the next session is Collaborating for Change, Arenas, Sports, and Entertainment. So we're going to talk a little bit about how, looking at partnerships and a case study example of how we can take this into events, into arenas. So please join me in welcoming Zoe Berman, Chief Operating Officer of Sound Future, Chris Granger, President of OVG 360, yes, I got that right. And then Chris Rowe, Director of Worldwide Carbon for Amazon, to the stage. We got two Chris's, so it's gonna get a little confusing up here, my Chris's, but we'll sort through it. Why don't we just start with some general? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about the work each of you are focused on in this space specifically. So let's start with Chris Rowe down there.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. I'm Chris Rowe, and I lead our carbon work at Amazon. And as Sally talked about, the climate pledge is really our North Star to achieve net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of Paris. And so I get the privilege of working internally at a crazy company like Amazon to figure out how do we do that? How do we mobilize action across very diverse businesses, and how do we think about integrating carbon as a core metric that we are going to drive down over time across our operations?
Amazing. Chris Granger?
I work for a company called Oakview Group. We are the largest developer and operator of arenas and live entertainment spaces in the world. That's arenas, stadiums, convention centers, music festivals, cultural institutions. We own and or operate over 400 venues of varying types and sizes. One of my sort of core functions within that, other than the management of those venues, is to take the lessons learned here at Climate Pledge Arena and apply those to other operators and other venues to help them operate more sustainably as well.
Amazing. Zoe?
My name is Zoe Berman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Sound Future, and we are a small but mighty nonprofit organization that's leveraging the power of live events to drive collective climate action and accelerate climate innovation and nature-based restoration projects. So we do that through a couple different lenses, but a lot of testing tech at live events to kind of demonstrate its efficacy and its scalability. Collecting and offering vetted, robust resources and sustainable vendors that can be adopted throughout the industry, and kind of serving as a voice for connecting and sort of removing silos between the climate science community and the live events community. And then sort of most recently within the last year, we've launched our Surf and Turf Restoration Program, which is essentially the first of its kind sort of restoration initiative entirely powered by live events. So that is basically raising money, channeling funds through the live event industry through standard sort of dollar per ticket model or merch proceeds, and channeling that into really high integrity, vetted, boots on the ground restoration initiatives, surf being sort of marine based, coral aquaculture, kelp restoration, things of that nature, and then turf being regenerative agriculture, terrestrial based projects. And so just kind of finding the highest integrity, biggest bang for your buck projects that we can channel funding from the live events industry into, and just to create a world where gathering does good, and shift the narrative from, basically saying we've gathered, we've done something naughty, and now we need to offset that to, okay, how can we drive some really collective good through the act of gathering?
Let's start with Climate Pledge, because we are here, and it is just behind us, basically. Chris Rowe, why don't we start with you, and just, I know the Chris's are both pretty involved in this, but just a look at kind of the massive undertaking it was in getting Climate Pledge Arena launched.
Great, yeah. So I grew up in Seattle, and I used to go to games with the Sonics. Hope they come back at some point. And hopefully you were at happy hour last night in the shadow of Climate Pledge Arena, but it was a joy for me to work on personally. We had a chance to purchase the naming rights to Climate Pledge Arena back in 2020 during the heart of the pandemic. I was trying to figure out how to do kindergarten with my kids at home and figure out how to work with these folks on making hopefully the most sustainable arena in the world come to life. And it was a real privilege to be able to do that in partnership with an amazing set of folks at the Oakview Group and the Kraken. And we chose to really think about what would it mean to actually set an ambitious target of creating the world's most sustainable arena. And so we set up with some headlines around food and transportation and the building and the experience. And we set up real headlines. And we like, for example, we want to have the greenest ice in the NHL. How do we do that? Okay, well, we're going to collect rainwater. And then along the way, there were so many no's, and there were so many opportunities for this thing to not go right. But it was super fun to see this thing come come to real life. And just personally, it's been really amazing to take my kids now to cracking games and know that there's abandoned natural gas piping throughout that building because it's all electric. I know my kids don't care at all, but I am super passionate about it, and it's just a real fun example of partnership.
Yeah, Chris Granger, anything you want to add to?
And partnership is the right word, right? This isn't about a naming rights deal. This isn't about sponsorship. I mean, this is as authentic as it can get. We cannot do what we are doing as operators without your partnership and without the guidance and the help with carbon accounting, the help with how do we think about the elimination of single-use plastic in the building and what are the implications of that up the supply chain. I mean, there are so many little but giant issues that we have to tackle in order to pull off a true zero carbon building, and we could not do it without you. So again, just kudos to you and your team and everybody at Amazon and the Climate Pledge. I mean, what we've done by itself is amazing, but beyond that, it's really given the industry something to say, it can be done. I can do that too. Or if I can't do all of it, I can do some of it. Like it's really it's changed the conversation about what's possible in our industry, and I think that is going to be one of the lasting legacy implications of this partnership.
Absolutely. Zoe, to you, I think I know we're talking specifically about the Climate Pledge Arena, but I would love to hear from all of you, and we'll kind of go down. When you are embarking on something this massive, what's your advice on how you really tackle something like this? And I think actually, how do you kind of make that start and really tackle it? Go with you first, Zoe.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of just breaking it down piece by piece and thinking, taking it one step at a time. Like Chris said, you don't need to tackle everything at once, and it might not be about doing everything. It might be about doing what is sort of tangible and accessible to you in that given moment and then going from there. And so we try to approach everything with this sort of green on green philosophy of, okay, we want solutions that are good for the bottom line and better for the audience experience, better for the artists or the sort of all stakeholders experience, and also have this, this other factor of being good for the climate, for being good for the planet. So trying to approach it from that angle, but just taking it piece by piece. So looking at solutions kind of in the waste sector, looking at solutions in audience transport and artist transport, looking at solutions in water and food and concessions, and how can we reshape that to have more plant-based offerings and kind of shifting things around. There's so many solutions. If you really break it down, events are kind of like mini cities, and if you think about it from the same perspective that you would approach decarbonizing a city, but just think of it as a smaller sort of nut to crack, then it makes it a little bit more tangible, and you can find solutions across each of those key areas.
Chris Rowe, back to you. When you started this journey, what was kind of the thing you found the most interesting or that you were most surprised, like as you embarked on trying to sort through this amazing undertaking?
When we decided to make this partnership happen, we thought about what can we bring to the table, to your point. And we've been the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy for the last 4 years in a row. And even just this last week, we've announced we've hit 100% renewable energy. And that's great for Amazon. But it's even cooler when we're able to use those learnings and enable others to kind of follow. And so when we were able to partner on these opportunities to make an all-electric arena powered by renewables, we had a lot to bring to the table. But doing that alone wouldn't be enough to, I think, keep up to the namesake of Climate Pledge Arena. What about the food? What about the transportation? And those are areas that the Oakview Group and others brought a ton of knowledge to the table. So it was really fun to just the co-learning, the co-inspiration, and riffing on things and knowing where can we bring value, where we can help accelerate, and how can we use our learnings. And as Sally mentioned, trying to extend those learnings out to the public and our supply chain as well.
You also had mentioned to me something that I found interesting, which was that when you get a no, how to turn that to a yes. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think this is an endurance game, and things don't happen automatically. And every no is a super important wayfinding to get to a yes. And not letting a good no go to waste is kind of one of my mantras. And I think at the arena, there was natural gas-fired HVAC equipment sitting ready to be constructed. Like, we got to make this thing all electric. How do we do that? How do we get to a yes? And looking the construction management team and the procurement team in the eyes and saying, we're going to do this. Like, what? What are you talking about? But like understanding their concerns. Well, how are we going to make 1 million pizzas during halftime without gas? Like, well, let's figure it out. Like, that's a no, and it's a wayfinding device that we can get into and really solve a problem. And that was sort of the spirit that we took on to really kind of get to yeses and ultimately get to what now we think the greenest arena in the world.
Chris Granger, over to you. When you do one of these projects, this one specifically, others that you work on, and how do you kind of approach it with the client and with the other partners that you're working with?
I think and you heard it on the last panel too, you try to meet people in communities where they are, and not every issue matters the same to every community. So we have a program called GOAL. GOAL stands for Green Operations and Advanced Leadership, and it's our collaboration of like-minded operators who want to move further, faster. But in working with them, you have some where they are in the Southwest United States where water conservation is a real issue, so the focus there is about water. We have other communities where tree equity and tree canopy is a real issue as it relates to sort of the justice implications of that. So we try to focus on that within the community. We have others where, there's a particular baseball team who we found through our tracking mechanism that they're producing 2 times as much waste as the average team in Major League Baseball. So it leads to 20 questions about, well, why is that, and what are you doing differently, and was there something different about your market? But there's so many different levers to pull, and again, it's what Zoe said, like, you don't have to tackle them all at the same time. Let's focus on the issues that matter most to you. Let's get some traction, let's get some wins, and we can go from there.
So Zoe, to you, I know you guys offer some really cool resources. Can you talk a little bit more about your climate conscious vendor directory that you've put together and how people can utilize that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just open source on our website. We're building out a vetted, everything just very underpinned with data and a robust vetting process of just sustainable vendors, and then kind of categorizing that by the locale that they service, because we do hear that feedback often. That's the first excuse everyone jumps to is, oh, well, we don't have reusables in our municipality, or, oh, well, we don't have commercial composting, so we need to come up with a different solution. And so kind of just having resources that are applicable for different communities across the country, across the globe, and we've been building that out and expanding it over time, and ultimately are in the process of turning that into an AI-powered Green Rider app that will generate solutions for venues and artists, and kind of meet them in the middle to find, so that artists can match with venues that are utilizing those resources, and that venues are kind of creating this competitive spirit with one another to be keeping up and kind of creating more, integrating more sustainable solutions.
Chris Rowe, back over to you. So in the role of partnerships and something like this, you have the Climate Pledge, not the Climate Pledge Arena.
Yeah.
How did that help in the process of this journey?
Well, Amazon covers a lot of surface area, and our path to net zero will not be linear. And we also have a lot of solutions at our fingertips that we're taking action on fast. Electric vehicles, we have over 20,000 now on the road, delivering packages to you all every day. The 100% renewable energy match we talked about is super exciting. There's a lot of work left to be done, and we're in several hard-to-abate sectors: steel, concrete. How do we actually make real progress? And these solutions will not come overnight without interventions and partnerships and investments. And so we stood up a $2 billion fund called the Climate Pledge Fund. It really aims to do just that, is look at the hardest parts of our footprint to abate and set out real technologies and invest in them, and then use them to scale these solutions that we all need. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to tackle the problem.
Chris Granger, and this is for everybody, but we'll start with you, and you shared a little bit about this, but technology, what is the role of technology that we're seeing the play in this journey and in the projects you're working on?
I think it's multifaceted. For us, it's everything from how do you track? How do you just track your carbon? How do you track your energy? How do you track your waste? How do you track your energy use in the building, and just having that baseline understanding at all times, so then, okay, here's how I'm performing over time. Then what we do is layer on top of that, here's what venues are doing, other venues in the Pacific Northwest, other NHL venues, other arenas that are more than 15,000 seats, to give you a baseline of comparables that, again, help uncover some questions along the way. That's one aspect of it, but it might also just be about, what technology can you use so that when you're thawing meat in your commissary, that you're not just running water into the sink and losing that water? How can you recycle that water, and what technology helps you solve that small but real issue within buildings? So again, I think at every sort of pinch point or pain point in the process, there might be a technology answer that can help you create more efficiency, that can help uncover performance over time, or can help solve the problem for you.
Zoe, what are some of the cool new technologies in that second category that you have seen that are starting to develop that are helping with the sustainability of large-scale events and arenas?
Well, I first just want to say I completely agree, and I love what the Goal platform that's really just creating these tools for collecting baseline data, because that is kind of a novel approach in our industry. Like, I think it's a lot of sort of stakeholders within the live event industry. You approach them with the idea of data collection, and they're like, "Data? That's the nerds over there. We don't touch that." So it's it's just a matter of knowing where you stand, so that you know where you're headed. So
or it's
critically
data
important.
for office buildings, or data for something that's irrelevant to what I do, which is again why we try to focus it on like my life.
Yeah.
And here's what matters.
Make it relevant.
Right?
Yeah, and just use words that are accessible. Use issues that are pertinent, and that is just critically important for just getting everyone kind of to find their place in that movement. But in terms of specific technologies, I think it's also a matter of how you define technology, because it can go from mycelium-based earplugs made from oyster mushrooms, if that's that's an emerging idea to reduce plastic waste. It can be as complicated as an AI-powered waste sorting robot, or composting biodigesters. It can be using large-scale AI Earth observation models to see where we stand with plastic consumption, where we stand with waste. We're powering the sort of tech platform behind our restoration program with an AI Earth observation model that's demonstrating the relative contributions of different events and mapping them onto essentially a swath of land or sea, and showing a restoration progress over time. And so utilizing that technology not just to lower emissions and to reduce waste and cost, but also to engage people and say, okay, well, now we need the visual storytelling component of this, so let's harness technology for that piece of it. So there's so many examples. I mean, from upcycling, waste into incredible art and engaging people in that way. Some arenas are doing great work with that, from taking food waste and creating candy that can be given out as concessions. I mean, the list goes, there's just so many incredible examples. Like, it's such an exciting time to be in this field, and especially in the live event sphere, because, it's really visible.
Yeah. Chris Rowe, anything you want to add on that one?
I mean, technology is core to what we do, but I think really kind of when in doubt, we follow the science and we have a good time doing it. And those two things, you don't need to also, I think Gina said it really well, and she's still here, super big fan, and I'm grateful to have your voice in this conversation. But a lot of the solutions are actually at our fingertips. And so it's a matter of finding ways to integrate what already works. And from a tech perspective, obviously, that is core to how we think about Amazon's footprint and collecting all that data. I mean, I know in our early kind of conversations, it was about how do we model the carbon footprint of an arena, and Beyonce coming in on an airplane, and all that stuff. And actually, we have models that can do that, so we're able to share that. So it's about obviously inventing and finding new innovations, but also using what we have and sharing it.
I would like to go to some more audience questions at this point. Anybody have some? One back in the corner over there to the left.
I'm Heidi with HBO, and it just tails right onto what you were saying. We have a website called greenbergguide.com where we work collectively with the other studios and streamers to make tools for anybody. So whether you're an independent or a student filmmaker or whatever, to go there and find resources very similar to your website that has a free vendor guide. I was just wondering if you also had an open source tool for footprinting of this, because we're starting to green our premieres and green our press tours and that kind of stuff. Do you have anything for that? We don't have to recreate anything.
Yeah, there are a lot of companies creating really incredible resources for that. We don't have that at the moment, because we're more focused on this restoration program and on kind of creating some of these other resources. But there are a lot of incredible softwares out there. Green Disco is one that's available. I think Goal has a lot of those resources available. If you
We do. It's a bit different for us because we do charge people for that. Not because we're trying to make money, because we don't, but it's by making people pay a small fee to participate, it ensures their focus and their intensity of it. Mm-hmm. If we were to give away the tool for free, then we're not as convinced yet that everyone puts in the time and the discipline and the intentionality into it. There clearly will be those who will, but by and large, we want to get this launched and we want to learn in such a way that it's people who are the most committed to it right now. So by putting a small sort of entry fee, it's more likely that they use it. That's what we found so far, at least.
I think that's true across the board. I haven't seen any that don't have at least some fee for involvement, unless it's just a very basic sort of carbon calculator. So typically there is some kind of fee for that service, but yeah, I'm sure that'll evolve over time.
Yeah. Any other audience questions? Oh, okay. We answered all the questions. Do you have one? Yeah, you have one. Okay.
My name is Rena. I just wanted to ask, if you think about the arenas and the venues that you operate, how do you think about expanding the circle around the venues in terms of decarbonizing and helping the communities that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right question, because it's not the arena, for example, sits in the middle of a beautiful park, right? And people are gathering. We gather at OVG roughly 300 million fans across all of our venues. But it's not just in the venue, it's around the venue, it's in the restaurants outside the venue, it's standing in line, and there's waste created outside, and there's transportation, carbon that's created coming to and from venues and tailgating. So we do try to think about the holistic experience, not just the in-arena experience. So for example, here at Climate Pledge Arena, and I should just give a quick shout out to Rob Johnson and B. Treat in the back, who do the actual work at Climate Pledge Arena. So kudos to them.
Rob Johnson is one of our green champions as well.
As he should be, as he should be. Every ticket holder can come to the event free on public transportation. So we do try to extend the focus and the footprint beyond just what's happening in the arena. And again, that could be transportation, it could be issues of stormwater runoff, it could be tree canopy issues, which I mentioned before. It could be using our parking lots to create solar arrays over and above to create shade in the parking lot. But it's not just about the arena, it's the sort of the broader space that we can influence we're trying to do things with.
Anybody else want to add anything on
Yeah,
that?
I'll add to that. So we are focused on trying to reach community. I mean, this is still kind of within the live event sphere, but trying to reach communities that haven't formerly been invited in a way that is accessible to them into this sort of climate conversation. And so we're really, particularly with our restoration program, we're really trying to focus on reaching country fans, reaching rap communities, reaching communities where we can utilize different language than what they've been approached with previously, so that they see their place and they see that they can find their footing in this conversation. And then building out restoration programs that are in their backyard. So we're focusing, for example, with regenerative agriculture projects in the state of Georgia, we're focusing on kelp restoration in the state of Alaska, and trying to kind of reach these communities where not only are we bolstering and kind of supporting and amplifying the community and those being disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, but we're trying to use language that really allows everybody a space in that conversation. And so we hope that reaches beyond the sort of event space directly. But everyone's a fan of something, so whether it's, or of someone. So whether you're actually physically at the event, or if you're just following, your favorite artist on social media and they're talking about this thing that they're involved in, we hope that will kind of amplify the mass resonance of these kinds of projects and then spread and become a more commonplace practice.
Chris Rowe?
I've just been on that for a quick second. I mean, that was actually part of the core imagination for why we thought it'd be cool to name this thing Climate Pledge Arena. Think about that. I get super excited every time I hear an ESPN announcer talking about climate. When does that, and what demographics watching the hockey game and thinking about climate, interacting with it in a new way. And if you go to the arena, there's no compromise in your experience. It is a markedly better experience. It's beautiful. It's so well done. I think that's sort of a misnomer in sustainability. It's all about compromises. In this case, no, it's a better experience. And I think when people can come in and actually have that be associated with climate and actually bringing people together at the city center, especially coming out of the pandemic, I think that's the confluence of the change that we're trying to make.
Interestingly, and this goes back to your question as well, so we've taken the lessons learned at Climate Pledge, and we've just opened a new arena in Manchester in the UK. It's the biggest arena in Europe, 23,000 seats, also all electric, also will be carbon zero certified. And Climate Pledge has been part of that as we created a walking path from downtown Manchester to the arena along the beautiful canal there. So it's a really cool way to sort of extend the partnership, but extend the vision of what we're trying to do.
For sure.
Ending on what we are all here to talk about, partnerships. Can you each give some advice to those in the audience, whatever industry they're in, trying to form partnerships? What's like the one nugget you would give them? I'll start with you, Chris Rowe, and we'll come down.
One nugget. Oh, man.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, I'm just trying to think about our relationship, and that's really what it's become. It's not just a transactional thing where you do this, I do that. We're now several years into this, and I could not imagine a better group of people to work with and alongside and learn from. So it's not about where you start, it's kind of where you go and where you finish. And so I think that would be the one nugget, is to really find these partnerships that are going to endure, because change takes time, and it's worth it.
Chris Granger.
Yes, I would say also just and continue to be open. Like it was hard for you to tell us, no, you can do better at certain things. And you really pushed us to get to a place that is truly best in class from a sustainability standpoint. And I give credit to, again, to Rob and to B and those on the team who had to figure out how to do certain things along the way. So being open to that, and also being open to new partners. Like we've had one sort of prep call for this panel, and within 10 minutes, Zoe and I have an idea of how we can focus on restoration topics within our live festival venues as well. So I just think being open to opportunities is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I would also just say find the person in the room with the perspective most different from yours and have that conversation. Because I think this room's not a good example of that, because we all have pretty similar perspective. That's what we're doing here. But I mean, I think one of the sort of superpowers with Sound Future has been creating spaces where people from these disparate communities are coming together. I mean, maybe that's their first time. And then also with events, maybe if you're introducing something with a climate perspective, maybe you're that first touch point for that fan, for that audience, member. Maybe that's their first point of exposure to that new idea, and they're seeing it at a festival or at a sports event, or they're seeing it in a setting where their brain is spongy, they're more receptive to new ideas. There's been a lot of emerging research that people at live events are 7% more likely to engage in climate action than the general population. And there's a lot of really cool studies emerging kind of in that area where people are I think people want to participate in some way if they can drive good, but they don't know where to start, or they don't know how it relates to them. And so finding that common ground is just so critically important, and just talking to people that are not in your little echo chamber, not talking to people that are outside of your sort of silo, because live events and climate don't seem directly related, but when you kind of think about all of the ways that they can collaborate and bolster one another, there's just the endless opportunities. So I think it's just a matter of doing that from whatever your sphere of influence is. Think about who you're in contact with and what other industries you can touch, and just find those opportunities to talk shop and think about how you can expand into other areas.
Zoe, Chris, and Chris, thank you so much for your time. That is the end of our program, but please... That is the end of our program, but please feel free to stick around and continue networking. We start back up at 2 o'clock on the main stage, and I did want to thank just one last time our title sponsor, Amazon, for sponsoring this breakout and making it possible. Thank you all so much.